What's up, everyone? Welcome in to the final week of the regular season Stadium Drive, Week 10, Wilford, Aaron Sprague, and we're in the OCC tonight. We've got the Hilliard Davidson Wildcats taking on the Upper Arlington Golden Bears, a chance for us to kind of get out of the MVL and some of our local, like Zanesville area teams that we've been covering for the majority of the season for Stadium Drive. But a good one in the OCC and a chance for Upper Arlington, if they were to win and Olentangy Orange to lose, could be a three-way share of the OCC title. So some stuff on the line tonight for Upper Arlington, but they need some help.
Right. Well, it's nice to get to the city. I mean, different level of football when you're talking Division I in the capital city of Ohio. Larger rosters, different level of athletes. So it's certainly cool to get out here to see them, especially in Week 10. And you're right. I mean, for a league title, it comes down to a couple things happening tonight. But the more I'm around some of these teams, I mean, they like to win league titles. I don't think they even talk about them very much, to be honest. There's what, 5 OCC divisions now?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of divisions, and it seems like the last few years they were always switching divisions too, so you couldn't get much continuity. So I'm not sure how much they really talk about it. I know a lot of it's they want to win state titles here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
In the big school division, you want to win state titles. Hilliard Davidson won a couple back in 2009 and 2011. So they've had a lot of success here in what they're doing, and Coach Scally is bringing that back here after a couple years. They're trying to figure it out. They've really put together a nice team this year and been able to win a lot of games. And yeah, every game's a toss-up. I was texting with Coach Schrader over at Orange earlier tonight, and we were talking about the scenarios as well for the standings. And I was like, well, it's going to be a fun one for you tonight. Good luck against Liberty. It's going to. I mean, who knows? I mean, all these teams, they're big games. I mean, there aren't many bad teams. Every night you got to come to play, and we are going to see that tonight. But it is definitely awesome to get into the city on a Week 10. Great weather.
Yeah, it's overcast, but it's nice and cool, and I don't think it's going to get much colder than this, and I think it's going to be a good night for us.
Right. We spend a lot of time in southeast Ohio, but because our coverage is so stretched out, we do try to pinpoint when we can get to a different location, and tonight is one of those nights. Earlier this year, you were able to hit up Orange.
That's correct.
For a rain game. You did the show from your car.
I did do the show from my car, yeah. That was an experience for sure, but we needed to bring the people what they want, which is some high school football coverage. And actually, the Orange AD came up to me on the field after I did the show, and it was pregame, and he was like, "Hey man, like, did the show from the car tonight, huh?" And I was like, "Yep." And gotta give the people what they want. And he's like, no, we really appreciate what you guys do for high school football.
Yeah, whatever it takes, man. And there are some big games tonight. And I know off the top of my head, a couple that stick out to me in the games we're covering. Sheridan hosting New Lexington on senior night. Sheridan really needs a win to lock in a playoff spot.
Yeah.
They could still get in maybe with a loss, but it's not guaranteed. Plus, that's a rivalry game.
Right.
New Lex is the small school MVL champion. That game, I think, is just going to be a fun one. And then up in Sugar Creek, you have the IVC annual showdown between Ridgewood and the Pirates. That should also be a good one. But, of course, Indian Valley pretty much having that one locked up for the season they've been having. So it's not a league title game like it usually is, but that's going to be a good one there in Sugar Creek in the IVC.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the last 10 years between these two teams, Davidson and Upper Arlington, it's a 5-5 split. But the first 5 years, Davidson won all 5. The last 5 years, since Justin Buttamore's been here, the Golden Bears have won the previous 5 matchups. So it's pretty interesting kind of how that history lines up, and we'll see who takes the lead, in this recent stretch here tonight.
Well, Davidson had such stability for so long with Brian White as the head coach. Won the Para State titles. And Coach Scally has been on Brian White's staff for quite a while. But whenever you lose your main guy, you got to figure some stuff out. Coach Scally had went to Upper Arlington for 1 year before he got rehired back here at Davidson.
Right.
And that opened the door for Coach Buttermore to go over to Upper Arlington. And, of course, he's seen nothing but success there. So a nice little it's just cool to see how the programs evolve and how much a head coach really has an impact on your program and makes a difference. These are high-level coaches coaching some high-level athletes. It's something we haven't mentioned, and I think that gets overlooked a lot. Coach Scally has done a great job, but he's done a great job of surrounding himself with good people. Mark Solis is his offensive coordinator, who had unbelievable success as the head coach at Olentangy. That is a huge asset. Now, of course, I have not seen Davidson play live in quite a while.
I did at the Orange game earlier this year. So.
And I'm told they throw it way more than they usually do.
Right. Yeah. In that game in particular, they ran it a lot because of the rain.
Yes.
So the elements kind of played a factor. But they did take their shots deep when they felt like they needed to, with some success. But they do definitely throw it more. I think the calling card is the running game. I think they would like to use the running game, but they do have a deep pass attack that I think kind of sneaks up on some teams.
Well, just to have a passing attack. I mean, historically, Davidson would throw 1 to 2 times a game.
Yeah.
That is it, no matter what. I mean, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They rode that to 2 state titles. They execute it really, really well because you do 3 times 3, that's 9, and every 4 downs, you get a first down. So that's all you need to do. Before we move on, Will, I did want to mention before we get kicked off of the interviews, the fact that it's week 10.
Yeah.
You know, it goes incredibly fast, especially for these kids, these players, but these parents. I always get kind of nostalgic a little bit when you think about the end, whether it's here on the football field or last night and this week seeing some volleyball teams, their season comes to an end, and just the emotion that is involved with that. It is senior night here at Davidson, and just appreciating what the fall sports season is. It is definitely more special than any of the others, and just the way it feels, the way it's set up, the fall air, everything about it, and it's just always really special. So these kids are going to take it in one last time, and fortunately for these two teams, they'll both be playing in Week 11 anyway. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that because Upper Arlington senior night was last week in a win against Dublin Kaufman, but something that Justin Buttermore does, and I talked about this with him in the interview that you'll get to watch here in a few minutes. He brings the dads into the locker room during the pregame speech because these kids don't get to where they are in their careers without obviously both mom and dad, but they bring the dads into the locker room and everything. They like to recognize the parents, and I just think that's a really unique thing, and that emphasizes what you're saying about just the special nature of Week 10 and the closing of the fall season.
It's just such an emotional journey for a family to see your child go from this to this and everything and all the time you've spent invested in playing a sport, and that this is the final piece before it's time to move on. So it's always really cool, and I'm sure everyone here and across Ohio and across the country will be embracing their Week 10 matchup. But yeah, have fun with it, guys. We appreciate you watching, and we're excited for tonight.
Absolutely. Let's hop into one of 2 interviews tonight. We'll start with the visiting Upper Arlington Golden Bears, Justin Buttermore, talking about senior night last week, bringing the dads into the locker room and how special that is and how he's been doing that for a number of years at Upper Arlington, but also just a dominant, well-rounded win against Dublin Kaufman, which sets up this matchup against a physical Hilliard Davidson team that likes to run the football and control the clock, but they take their shots deep downfield too. So he's going to dive into the matchup here tonight, live on Stadium Drive Week 10. Thanks for being here live on Facebook, X, and YouTube, and here's Coach Buttermore. All right, well, Justin Buttermore is joining us, Upper Arlington Golden Bears, going into Week 10, the final week of the regular season. Thanks for being here, Coach. I always appreciate your time, so really appreciate you joining our show. But I want to start with last week, the win against Dublin Kaufman, 38-13. It was senior night, and I want to start with the pregame speech, actually, because we had part of it in there in our video, and I just thought it was so simple, but yet so powerful. You talking to the kids about how important their dads are, in leading them to this moment. Just talk to me about that, and I guess what went into you crafting that pregame speech for your kids.
Well, over the course of the last several years, I guess I've invited the senior dads into the locker room for senior night, and honestly, that started. I think I did it maybe once at Tri-Valley, but it really, after my kids were seniors, I thought about how special it was for me to be there for all of those moments with them. And obviously, most dads aren't in the locker room on a nightly basis, but I want to invite them in. And I think, for kids to stick around in football's a tough sport. And I said that when I talked to the kids, it's tough. And the kids that start out in youth league, not very many of them end up being 4-year players in high school. And it's hard to stick around because it's a tough sport. You practice all week for 1 game. You practice all year for 10 games. And, I told them, I think there's to stick around for this long, I think there's about certainly some part love for the game. And, I think just going through it with my own kids, and I don't want to minimize the role of the moms because they certainly have a huge role too. But,
of course.
the love of the game and the traveling back and forth. And, oftentimes in all sports, I mean, that starts with mom and dad. So I want to give them the opportunity to kind of be in there and spend that time with their kids.
No, I love that. That's absolutely awesome. And obviously, it's great that you came out of that game with a win, too. And it kind of felt like your offense was really balanced throughout. I mean, Kyle was making some deep throws down the field, but he also was hitting guys underneath in space. But then the offensive line looked like they were just moving people around and creating some holes for your backs. Wally had 2 touchdowns receiving. I mean, when you look at your offensive production in that game, did it feel like it looked pretty balanced to you?
Yeah, I thought we played really well. I thought all night that we were efficient. We got ourselves in good down and distances. When we've struggled this year, it's because we've been behind the chains. We've not played good first down offense. And I thought we played really good first down offense. I thought we got the ball out and spread it out to a lot of different people. I thought we had a lot of quick perimeter throws. And then obviously still took some shots, but the ability to kind of be efficient in both the run and pass game, I thought it allowed us to just move the ball pretty successfully all night.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hilliard Davidson this week, they kind of pose a different challenge because, they do have a quarterback who is talented and can hit guys deep down the field, an accurate deep ball guy in Johnny DeBlasio. But I feel like the running game is kind of their calling card. And I remember being at their game against Olentangy Orange where their first drive, I think it ate up the overwhelming majority of the first quarter. I mean, they just control the clock and they will wear you down with the run game. I mean, how do you combat something like that where maybe your offense is going to have potentially limited opportunities, against a team that runs the ball so well?
Yeah, I think they're really good. I mean, they do a lot of great things offensively and defensively, but offensively, they're really dynamic. I mean, obviously, they throw the ball well. The quarterback can run and throw.
Mm-hmm.
The tailback is obviously a handful. I mean, he's a tough kid to get down. He runs so low to the ground and runs so powerfully. I mean, you really got to commit a lot of guys to him. So I agree with you. You watch a film, they move the ball on everybody, and they eat up chunks of clock. And so at the end of the day, you can't let them do that. You got to find a way to get them off the field. You got to find a way to get your offensive ball back, because not only does that eat up time, but it oftentimes leads to kind of being on the wrong end of field position when you can't get stops and you allow first down after first down. So, I think we're going to have to play really well defensively. They're an explosive offense, but we're going to have to find a way to play good first down defense and put them in longer yardage situations.
Absolutely. When you look at the film of their last game against Liberty, they lost that game 32-7. Is there something that Liberty did in that game that Davidson struggled with that maybe you can use to your advantage?
Well, the score was really, I was surprised by the score, but the score when you watch the game was really not indicative of the game. I mean, they had 4 turnovers. Davidson had 4 turnovers. They caught a kickoff and went out of bounds at their own 1-yard line. It was still 7-0 with a minute to go in the first half, and Davidson fumbled, Liberty scored. Davidson fumbled the ensuing kickoff return, and Liberty scored again. So it went from 7-0 to 21-0, and I think it kind of just demoralized them. But I don't expect, obviously, something like that to happen again. So Liberty's obviously a really, really good team, and so is Davidson. But I think the score, it looked like it was a blowout, but it really was a bunch of different circumstances that kind of led to that.
Yeah, and just some randomness, I suppose, that kind of just can snowball. So what do you do then to maybe contribute to some more randomness and force some turnovers on their end? I mean, what do you do defensively to match up and force fumbles, or maybe it's get an interception? I mean, your defense has been doing a really good job of that all year of forcing turnovers in key spots. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I think it's just getting a lot of guys around the ball. I tell our kids all the time, I mean, you can't try to play hero ball to get interceptions and fumbles. I mean, I think a lot of turnovers are a result of just great team defense. You get a lot of guys around the ball, and if it pops out, there's guys there to recover it. If you get a lot of guys running to the ball on a pass and it gets tipped in the air or whatever, I mean, a lot of interceptions are tipped balls, overthrows. So I really think, creating turnovers in large part is just playing really good fundamental defense and flying to the football. And the more guys you have around the ball, the greater chance the ball's going to end up in your hands.
Definitely. Well, we're set up for, I think, a good game this Friday, Coach. You guys are playing excellent football, and so is Davidson. But Week 10, it all comes to this, man, and then it's playoff time. So thanks so much for joining the show today to hype up Week 10. Best of luck, and obviously, hopefully you guys make a deep run in the playoffs this year.
All right, thanks. Well, appreciate you.
And Wally Swiney has been going long all season for the Golden Bears. 2 receiving touchdowns last week in their 38-13 win over Dublin Kaufman on senior night. And Upper Arlington's offense has really been very well balanced all season long. The running game, the offensive line's been creating a lot of holes for their backs, but the passing game's been working as well. And Kyle Cox, as a 3-year starter, really elevated his game as a pocket passer for the Golden Bears. And obviously the defense is always good for the Golden Bears too, as it has been for numerous years under Buttermore, all of Buttermore's teams over the years at Tri-Valley, Granville, now at UA. Outstanding defenses. But let's flip over now to the Hilliard Davidson side. I covered this team a handful of weeks back against Olentangy Orange. It was a rain game. They ran the ball a lot more than they threw it, but when the rain did die down, they did take some shots downfield, and they lost a close one to the Orange Pioneers. But talking to Jeremy Scally, the head coach, last week's game against Liberty, it was a 7-0 game with just a couple minutes left in the first half. And Johnny DeBlasio, their quarterback, got pressured, threw the ball, but they ruled it a fumble. So some controversy there. Ruled it a fumble. Liberty scores. Then they fumble the ensuing kickoff. Davidson does, and it just kind of snowballs, and they're down 21-0 going into the half when just a minute before it was 7-0. And it's just kind of one of those random games where just things that can go wrong do. And not that Davidson's not a good football team. They absolutely are. They just had some bad luck and some bad breaks go in Liberty's favor. But Coach Scally's going to talk about that, along with just preparing for this UA defense that is what he calls a bend but don't break. They will make you work for every single yard. They're not going to give up the chunk plays. They will make you drive it 80, 90 yards down the field to score a touchdown rather than giving up these big plays. And UA does also force turnovers in key spots. They've been doing it all season long. And against the Orange Pioneers, they controlled the clock. They ran out the majority of that first quarter, and I'm sure they're going to look to do the same tonight to kind of really grind down the UA defense, but also just limit the offensive opportunities for the Golden Bears as well. But here is head coach Jeremy Scally of the Upper Arlington Golden Bears, live here on Facebook, X, and YouTube for Stadium Drive Week 10.
Well, Jeremy Scally is here, Hilliard Davidson Wildcats, going into Week 10, the final week of the regular season. And thanks for being here, Coach. I always appreciate your time. I want to start by kind of recapping last week, because last week you lost 32-7 to Liberty, but it was kind of a weird game because you were only down 7-0 going into the last few minutes of the first half. And then Johnny DeBlasio had a pass that was maybe should have been ruled incomplete, but it was called a fumble when he was under pressure, and then Liberty scores, and then you fumble the ensuing kickoff, and it just kind of snowballed. But I mean, that's just randomness that sometimes you just can't prepare for, in a football game on a Friday night. But I mean, how do you evaluate kind of how that sequence went, and then just the rest of the game?
Yeah, momentum's a funny thing, right? Trying to get it, trying to keep it, trying to get it back when you lose it, and just sports in general, just momentum. It's you can't really measure it, but you can feel it. And, it was what was kind of wild about that sequence was, I looked up, I believe there was 2:56 left on the clock, 2:56 left in the first half. And they had just scored, I believe, to make it 7-0, right? So we were playing really well. I was just trying to remind our coaches and our players, we were playing really, really well. And then it was just, the incomplete pass, fumble. I don't know. You got to go with what's called, and it is what it is. And you just got to respond to adversity. And we just didn't handle, the adversity. And all week I talked to our guys, said, listen, like, our best players have to be our best players. And, and I love our kids and I love the players that, made mistakes, but, in those moments, they were not our best players. So, and the opening kickoff too, was one of those pieces that, we kind of fumbled the opening kickoff out of bounds at the -2. And that's just kind of like, I don't know, kind of pops the balloon momentum wise just to get it started. But, like it just was a really funky sequence that, we just have to respond better when bad things happen. And when you play really good teams, like there's going to be bad things that happen. There's going to be some awesome things that happen. Well, the awesome things, those are easy to respond to. It's the adverse, really difficult situations. And then to compound it, those were like things that we had not ever done, and they all kind of showed up in sequence. And then at that point, you're just trying to get to the locker room, regroup, reset. And I thought coming out of the half, I thought we were still playing really, really well. They took their opening drive to start the second half. They went down and we forced a field goal. And that's a win. Like that's really good against an offense of that caliber with those players that they have. And but we played really well. There's a saying in coaching: it's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it seems. And that, from my experience, that was something like it felt really bad, right? And your emotions, you feel a certain way, and then you just got to like watch the tape. And the tape told me that we still have a really good football team, and we played a really good football team. But it wasn't as bad as how it felt. If that makes any sense at all.
No,
but it just was. We played far better than what that sequence would tell you, and far better than the final score. And the final score is what it is. Like, they beat us and they're really good, and that tells you something. But no, like we put it to bed really quickly. And then certainly, you get what you emphasize as well. So, all right, cool. As coaches, we maybe there's things we need to teach a little bit better and emphasize a little bit better. But we responded. Our kids responded, Saturday morning really, really well. Just one of those things. You just got to move past it really quick. Playing an opponent like UA gets your attention immediately, so you can't linger on the result of the previous thing. You just got to stay focused on your process of preparation.
Absolutely. And yeah, everything that you said makes total sense to me. Yeah. And it's just one of those anomaly type games where it just seems like what can go wrong, does go wrong. But you mentioned UA, and obviously it's a big one to close out the regular season this week. But I know that your teams, you really like to rely on the running game, and Keevin Gibbon has just been a dominant guy all year in the backfield for you. And I remember, being at the Olentangy Orange game that you guys played in, and that first quarter, I mean, he ate up so much clock. You guys, ran out pretty much the majority of that first quarter and kind of controlled the time of possession. Is that going to be the key going up against UA's defense and Buttermore's scheme, which is, I mean, his defenses are some of the best in the state?
Yeah. I mean, we're not changing, right? So like who we are is our identity is in the box, right? Like our identity is offensive line, defensive line, running backs. So, high school football, you got to run the ball. It is my opinion. I'm not saying I'm a genius, but like you got to run the ball and you got to stop the run defensively. And everything has to start with those two things, right? So are we a little bit more diverse this year offensively? Sure. Do we have some players on the perimeter we feel like we can get the ball to in space? Yes, absolutely. Do we have a 3-year starter at quarterback? Yes. But our identity, you got to be who you are. Our identity is still offensive line play, win the line of scrimmage. We have 2 exceptional running backs in our opinions. So that's our identity. The thing with playing, Buttermore's defense, to use your words, is they are the bend but don't break, right? and teams I think struggle to be patient with them, and they make it really hard on you because they're so well coached, they're so well aligned. They truly play like team defense. They're 111th. Everyone does their job, but I think the key is just be patient, just be steady. What you see on film is what you're going to get on game night, which is a compliment to them. Like they know who they are. They know the kids they have. They know the kid. They don't ask their kids to do something that maybe their kids are not capable of doing. But yeah, they're a bend but don't break defense, and that's what we've seen on film this season is kind of same old in a good way. They just get lined up. They know their jobs. They play them. They play really well. They play with great technique. They're really well coached. But our week has not been about discussing how great UA is. Our week has been about ourselves and what we need to do and what we can control. Certain things we can't control. I can't control his calls defensively. I can't control what coverage he lines up in, but I can control how we respond to the coverage, to the call, to the scheme. So that's really what we focused on this week. I know it sounds cliche, coach speak, right? You hear that probably every time you talk to a head coach, is focus on the process, focus on ourselves. But that's exactly what we did starting Saturday morning.
You mentioned bend, don't break. How do you do that defensively against UA's offense? Because, Kyle Cox and their one receiver, Wally, Wally had 2 receiving touchdowns last week, and he's been a great deep threat for them, for the majority of the season, but also can do a lot in space too underneath. What do you rely on in your process with your defense and the calls that you make to be able to match up with, the things they can do on the outside, but they're pretty balanced too, and their offensive line is good and creates lanes for their guys to run. How do you match up with that balance?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to like everything that we do is predicated right on stopping the run. We can't get ourselves in one-on-one matchups. I love our guys, but like one-on-one matchups for us are not great. So how do we do that? We feel like we play team defense. We do our 111th. If our kids are just focused on their 111th, their slice of the scheme, no matter what the call is, right call, left call, blitz, no blitz, that doesn't matter. It's not scheme, it's execution of scheme, and there's a big difference between the two. But we rely on pursuit, flying to the ball, you making the tackle, right, and then just make them snap it again, and just keep making them earn it. That's kind of the philosophy. That's obviously what teams do to us. That's what they're going to do to us tonight. Is they're going to make us keep snapping the ball. So we'll keep snapping the ball. They'll keep snapping the ball. And they just a war of attrition at the end of the day is all it is.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun one to watch. UA, Hilliard Davidson, week 10. So thanks so much, Coach, for taking us inside your brain going into the final week of the regular season. But best of luck against the Golden Bears, but also just the rest of the way, your playoff run. And you guys have had a great season to this point, and I always appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate you and everything you guys do for high school sports, man. It's awesome. Appreciate it.
Keevin Gibbon is the lead back, the workhorse for this Hilliard Davidson offense. Scored the lone touchdown for the Wildcats in their 35-7 loss to Olentangy Liberty, but a game where the score is not really reflective of how the game went. And as you heard Coach Scally describe, just some unfortunate bounces, so to speak. And it was a 7-0 game with a couple minutes left in the first half, and within a minute, you blink and it's 21-0 off of a couple of turnovers, 4 turnovers total for the Hilliard Davidson Wildcats, and definitely an anomaly compared to how they've played for the majority of the season. But Keevin Gibbon, without a doubt, the guy in the backfield. He's going to get a lot of touches tonight, of course, for the Hilliard Davidson Wildcats. We've got about 25 minutes until game time here at Hilliard Davidson High School. And take a look at, the last 10 matchups between these two schools. And we'll pull it up here for you. The last 10 matchups, it's an even 5-5 split, and it's all blue from 2014 to 2018, and it's all yellow from 2019 to 2023. Hilliard Davidson, dominated the first half of this recent 10-year stretch, but since Justin Buttermore has taken over with the Golden Bears have won 5 straight games, including last year where they won 10-0. But it's a 5-5 series split, and it's going to be a really good game here tonight. I'm really looking forward to watching it. Perfect weather for it, too. It's overcast, but not cold at all. Hopefully it doesn't drop too much. But before we get out of here tonight and get ready for this game, let's go through the rest of our coverage area. And we'll start with the other Columbus games, Central, Western Ohio, here in Week 10. Centerville is hosting Wayne. Dublin Kaufman hosting Hilliard Bradley. Dublin Scioto is at Westerville North. The Gehenna Lincoln Golden Lions will be at Pickerington North. Grandview Heights' game against Columbus Mifflin was canceled. Injuries on the Columbus Mifflin side, so hopefully they're okay. And, all those kids get back healthy. And obviously it's the last week of the regular season, but you hate to see something like that. It's the second time this year that I've seen that, with Riverview canceling against West Muskingum middle of the season. Granville is hosting Mount Vernon. Hamilton Township will go to battle with Logan Elm, as well as Jonathan Alder hosting Tecumseh. Marion Elgin, a team that we're covering for the first time this year, filming for them, hosting Hardin Northern. The New Albany Eagles and the Westerville Central Warhawks. Olentangy at Olentangy Berlin. And a really big one down there at the bottom, Olentangy Liberty and Olentangy Orange. If Olentangy Orange loses and then Upper Arlington wins here tonight, then we have a three-way split for the OCC title between Liberty and Orange and the Golden Bears. So a lot kind of on the line here tonight, and that's going to be a big one at Olentangy Orange. And then let's go to the other side of our coverage area, east and northeastern Ohio, to round out the show tonight. Dalton is hosting Waynedale. A big battle in the IVC, as Aaron mentioned at the top of the show. Although it's not for an IVC title, it's still a big-time rivalry, Garraway and Ridgewood. Talmadge is hosting Copley. Union Local, after dropping their first game of the year at St. Clairsville, at home against St. Clairsville last week, is going to be at Barnesville. I'm sorry, St. Clairsville was 2 weeks ago. They won at Bel Air last week, but they're at Barnesville tonight. Tri-Valley at John Glenn. And Tri-Valley, with a win, would win the MVL Big School Division outright. Maysville at Crooksville on the right side of your screen. Meadowbrook is hosting the West Muskingum Tornadoes. Philo at Morgan. A big MVL rivalry. New Lex just won the small school division in the MVL at Sheridan. And Sheridan doesn't necessarily need to win to make the playoffs, but it would certainly help their case. And then Zanesville at Licking Heights. So that rounds out the rest of our games in our coverage area tonight. Of course, follow us on all the socials, especially on X, for score updates for any of the games that you're looking to follow. I'll be here tonight posting score updates with video as well, just to keep you in tune with the story of this game and how it unfolds. Make sure you check out our Fear Does Not Exist merch. It's plastered on our social media. It should be pinned on Twitter, or X, on Facebook. Get yourself something. Halloween is next week. Halloween parties, you're probably having one this weekend, next weekend. Get yourself some Storied Rivals Fear Does Not Exist merch before it runs out. And also, we want to give a shout out real quick to our friends at maxeffortmuscle.com. Real supplements for real athletes. A couple games in our coverage area. We give out some merch, a t-shirt, and as well as some protein, aminos, recovery, all sorts of things to our Max Effort Muscle player of the game at a few games in our coverage area. But leave a comment down below who you think is going to win this game tonight, Upper Arlington Golden Bears and the Hilliard Davidson Wildcats. And I'll sign off for now, and I'll get you some updates and some highlights throughout the night. But thanks for tuning in to Storied Rivals' coverage of high school football throughout the entire regular season. Can't believe that Week 10 is upon us. On Stadium Drive, we'll move on to the playoffs next week in Week 11, and we'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Happy football and happy Halloween.